Verbal and nonverbal communication. This is, we believe, the heartbeat of a relationship. When you fully understand how to verbally and non-verbally communicate effectively, that's what makes your relationship thrive. Without it, it's like not having a heartbeat. The relationship's dead. If you take this picture, um, the guy says, "How was your day, baby?" And the lady says, "Good, and yours?" This was all done via text message at a dinner table while sitting right beside each other. I'm sure you know someone who's a texter, who's in the same room, and they'll text you something, when they could just speak it to you.
And take the top picture for example. So these two are on the phone talking, and you can see that they're more engaged, they're happier, both parties are smiling. Whereas the bottom, they're both in their phones. So maybe they're looking on Instagram, maybe they're on Facebook, maybe they're on some type of social media platform, or maybe they're checking their emails. Maybe they're, you never know what they're doing, but it's just the simple fact that they don't even take the time out to enjoy each other's company um, before allowing outside forces to come into their relationship via communication.
I can remember back in the day when we had to actually physically call someone. There wasn't a such thing as text message. When I could imagine talking to Atia, my now wife, when I could imagine talking to her, I could imagine, listening to her voice on the phone and then just gazing somewhere else, just imagining her face and how she was talking to me and what she looked like while we were talking. Whereas with the text message, it's like, yeah, you can do so many things while you're on your phone texting. It's like you're not really thinking about the person that you're talking to, or you're not really thinking about exactly what you're saying. Text messages can get misconstrued. So without getting too deep into text messaging, we're just basically saying just understand the most effective way to communicate in your relationship, and that's what makes the relationship thrive.
So we want you guys to think this through, right? This is a think it through lesson, think it through slide, and so we have a couple questions, and I'm sure that you or your mate or have fallen victim to some of these things. And the first question asks, have you and your mate ever fought because you heard something totally different than what your mate meant? And we're going to go deeper into that on the text messaging and the emailing and everything like that. We're going to go deeper into that because we want to give you examples of exactly what we're saying by that. And then the next question asks, what's more important in communication, logic or emotion? That one is very deep. Oftentimes people communicate and they're too worried about what the other person is thinking or too worried about what I should say instead of just saying what's on your mind so that we can naturally, openly communicate about it. Don't try to think about what I'm saying, or don't try to think about what's the right thing to say. Just naturally say what's on your mind without worrying about. In a relationship, this person is the person who you should be able to be vulnerable with. So just dropping all the walls and dropping all the curtains and being able to actually talk it through with your mate is what's most important. So oftentimes it shouldn't be about logic, more about emotions, but sometimes in some relationships, logic plays a bigger role than emotion. And then the next question asks, when you approach any conversation with your mate, is your thought process, I have an issue and my mate needs to fix it? So I just want you to take a couple seconds and think about when you go into any conversation with any, most of the time, this is a negative conversation. When you go into any negative conversation with your mate and your thought process is, I have an issue and my mate needs to fix it, how well does that go over? Just take about 3 seconds just to think about that. So what this does is automatically puts the person on a defense because you're naturally going in with, well, I have an issue and he or she needs to figure out how to fix it. Instead of going in the conversation with the thought process of, I want you guys to help me rewrite the narrative, right? Let's rewrite the narrative in all relationships and all households. And think about it this way. Instead of, I have an issue and my mate needs to fix it, let's think of it this way. I have an issue. Let me see how I can help my mate help me fix this issue. It's much different. It's, how can I help you help me? If you don't go into the conversation with, let me help you help me, instead you go in with, you need to just figure it out and help me, it's automatically putting the person on the defense. And in conversations and through communication and relationships, we don't want to put the person on the defense because then we don't get the best out of them. We always want to be able to get the best out of any conversation that we have within our relationships with our mates. So we have to now learn how to figure out how to get them to help me help you, or, help you help me, and vice versa. So, just to give an example of what I'm saying, let's take for instance you have a mate who smokes too much, and you're someone who don't like a smoker, or smoking just drives you insane.
Smoking cigarettes, right? Smoking
Yeah,
cigarettes.
smoking cigarettes, just, smoking cigarettes or whatever. So you have someone who smokes, your mate smokes, and it drives you insane. Most people will go into the conversation in this manner. Why do you smoke? It drives me crazy. Like, I just can't take it. It stinks. Whatever. Right? So that's how most people will go into the conversation. We want you to change it and go into the conversation this way. Babe, what does smoking do for you? How can I help you smoke a little bit less so that we can ultimately work together so that you could possibly end smoking and stop smoking just for your health? Because if you're healthy, ultimately I'm healthy. I want you to be healthy so that we can live a lifelong relationship together.
And the reason we want you to see the different ways to say things is because immediately, I don't smoke, but immediately, if Atia was to say to me, why are you smoking? Like it stinks. Like if she was to come to me directly like that, that will automatically put me on a defensive. And once one person gets on a defense, then that creates the argument.
Yeah, and so in an argument or in a conversation, once a situation becomes an argument, neither party wins. No one won in this situation. And the reason why is because I'm now blinded to your point of view and you're blinded to my point of view. So that's why oftentimes in most debates, professional debates, they don't let one overtalk the next person. They let one get their point out, and then you're listening to their point, and then you get your point out. So that's why a debate is slightly different than an argument, because once you put me on the defense and now we're arguing, neither party can see the other person's perspective or point of view. So in sense, is no purpose in arguing. And what we want you to do to make your relationship healthier and more successful is, one of the major things is communicating effectively. We want you to communicate effectively, and instead, just to reiterate, instead of saying I have an issue and my mate needs to fix it, let's say I have an issue, but let me see how I can help my mate help me fix this issue. And here you see, this is just to reiterate everything that we just said. It's just simply saying good communication requires self awareness and a willingness to want the issue to be resolved without an argument. So, again, that goes back to us saying you have to go into the conversation with a loving manner. You don't want to go in with fire blowing out your mouth. You want to go in, with flowers, thinking in your mind, I'm going to go in and be as lovely as a flower. So that when you go into the conversation, you're not starting off with the argument, with an aggressive argument, right? Then it says, there are many ways to communicate today, yet understanding the importance of communicating effectively is a major issue. So that goes into, understanding which method should I use at which time so that you can get the effective message through, right? And then it says, understand is not just the act of communication, but the manner in which you communicate. And we just said that is just simply saying that that little piece is very monumental. It says, understand is not just the act of communication, but the manner in which you communicate. So if you're always communicating in an aggressive manner, you'll never get anything through to anyone. I know a girl who, whenever anybody has a discussion with her, she always goes against whatever you're saying. May it be right or may it be wrong. She does not care. She goes against it. And so no one wants to have a discussion with her, a debate with her, or anything because you already know that whatever in her mind, whatever she says is golden. And that's not the way you want to be in a relationship. In a relationship, you want to allow one to communicate and allow yourself to communicate so that you guys can communicate effectively.
Now, here's a few do's and don'ts of verbal and nonverbal communication. All right, the first do says express everything in a positive manner, exactly how you want it to be received. Okay, so here's an example of that. Let's say we're leaving the house and I say, or someone says, come on, let's go. Y'all not ready? When they could have simply said in a positive manner, are you guys ready to go?
And then the next do simply says, take into consideration your mate's feelings before speaking. That means don't just start talking, don't just blurt things out that you may not even know. How is this person going to take this? See, you know your mate better than anyone else does. And you know if I say this to my mate, it's going to tick him off or her off, right? We don't know that. So I may be able to say something to your mate and it may tick him off. And you knew that that was going to tick him off or her off, vice versa, right? So we want you to be able to take into consideration your mate's feelings before speaking. Think about it first. Think and say, how is this person going to feel if I say this to him or her at this very moment? And then say it. If you think, okay, my mate is going to be fine with that, then you speak it openly and honestly in a positive manner, not a negative manner.
Ask questions if you don't understand. So let's go back to the point of leaving the house on time. Maybe you can say something like, are you guys, you can start with, are you guys ready to go? Are you guys ready to leave? Does anyone need help? Asking questions if you don't fully understand why they're not ready or prepared to leave. Like, would they need some help or do you need more time? Just things like that.
And then on to our don'ts. So the first don't says, don't get upset if your mate doesn't agree with you. So it's simply saying in communication and in conversations, the purpose of us having this conversation is so that we can try to understand each other. That doesn't necessarily mean that I have to agree with your point of view or your perspective. But if we communicate and do all of our dues and communicate in a positive way, if we take one's feelings into consideration and if we ask questions if we don't understand what they're saying, then and only then can we honestly not get upset if the person doesn't agree with what you're saying. See, it takes two to have a conversation, two or more. You can have a conversation with yourself, but then what? People thinks that you're insane, right? You're crazy.
Only if you're talking
And
back to yourself.
if you're talking back to yourself, right? And that's okay. But we're in the situation of a relationship and in a conversation. You don't want to um put your mate on a defense by having them shut down by always putting them on a defense because they're thinking he or she's not going to agree with me anyway. So why should I continue this conversation? So that simply says, don't get upset if your mate doesn't agree with you. Continue the conversation and just try to help your mate see your point of view and your perspective. And if they don't, then move on.
The next one is don't assume you understand the point of your partner if they don't say it. So basically, don't assume you understand their point. If they don't say it, if they don't give you their point of view, don't assume you understand it. Um, Basic point: if their point of view isn't clear, then you can't assume you understand it because you don't understand it yet at that point. So basically, while having a conversation or a debate with your mate, just imagine you have an invisible mediator, someone in the middle, and they are making you say your point, and then the other person's listening to that point, and then you say your point, and then the opposite person is listening, so that you can clearly understand each point of view. Because in most situations, I'm not going to say in most, maybe in half of the situations, you could be saying the same thing just in different words. And if you don't fully understand the point of view of one person, then it could make the whole situation just a little fuzzy, just not understanding the point of view and assuming you understand the point of view.
Then last but definitely not least, and this is just a couple of do's and don'ts. There are many that go into verbal and nonverbal communication, but these we really wanted to get out and talk to you about. And the last one just says ask questions. Don't ask questions in a negative manner. Don't don't say to your mate, just like in my previous example, we talked about smoking, right? Don't say to your mate, you need to stop smoking. It stinks really bad. That's a negative manner. To you, it may be a positive manner, but the way that that person is going to take the way you said that is a 100% going to be negative in a negative manner. Or in the question form, why do you smoke? Why do you smoke? Like it kills your lungs, it makes your nails yellow. Why? Just why? That's a negative manner. If one is doing something, they may already know the negative effects that it has on them, but they continue to do it. So it's your job to get this person to see why they shouldn't do whatever the thing is that you don't want them to do in a positive manner, not asking negative questions. So here are some do's and don'ts examples of talking to someone effectively in a positive manner instead of a negative manner, right? So the first one says, I wish you would stop smoking. It stinks and it makes my stomach hurt. That's a don't, right? Why not say it in this manner? How can I help you smoke less often? Maybe one day even helping you stop. That's a better way to say things. Now, the second one says, you need to stop talking to my kids like that. You have no sense. Instead of saying, my daughter loves you as a person and a stepfather, but I think you get more out of her if you spoke to her with love. You see that? You see where we're going with this? And then so the last one says, you spend money like a child. You should learn how to save effectively. Instead, you should say, is there a way we can work together to learn different money saving techniques so that we can effectively save in a better manner together? So these are just a couple examples that we want you, and we hope you're getting the gist of where we're coming from. It's just learning how to say things in a better way to get the most from your partner. That's all we want. That's all we want you guys to do is just learn how to say things so that you can get the best result from your partner. Okay? Now for our accountability sheet, we want you to write down 3 to 5 things you've said to your mate in a negative manner, and then write down the positive ways you could have said them, either next to on the side, down below it, or whatever, just so that we can go over this in our call with you and just kind of see if you understand exactly where we're coming from with this.
And if you don't have any that you said, just come up with 3 to 5 that you could just give a positive response to. So just write down the negative and then give the positive side to it.
So until next time, help us help you take the madness out of matrimony.